We have to make a special introduction, I think, for this hour on Fridays because we have to say hosts because Todd Eccles is in studio with us from Patriot Defense. Welcome back.
It's good to be back. We took last Friday off,
Right?
and here we are. Weather's getting nicer. Yeah, people need to be out shooting.
It's not quite nicer yet, but
Oh, by the afternoon when you get off work, it's not horrible out. You can go out and shoot.
actually, for me, it's been beneficial because I haven't had to have either the heat on or I don't have a problem sitting in a nice cool breeze even with the doors open if it's 55 out. But I haven't had to have the heat on or the AC on. So I'm saving money as long as we maintain this weather pattern.
No AC at my house yet, but we kick up our wood stove every night for about the last week. And whether I want to or not, my wife's always cold, so she kicks it up. And she came in last night, and it was blazing hot in there, and I've got the side door open, catching that nice cool breeze. She's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I'm melting in here."
I like that old Italian saying, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, if I get hot, I just go to bed.
Yes.
I'll go upstairs where it's cooler.
I remember when we were kids, it would be about 80, 85 with the wood stove going. And then when you got up in the morning, you'd still be somewhat warm. But during the night, of course, you're under a blanket. You don't notice. But I remember when my feet would hit those hardwoods.
Oh yeah,
And then that startles you because they'd be cold.
that'll wake you up.
I got a quick story to share with you. This came from the Heritage Foundation. The headline is Eliminating DC's Handgun Ban Had No Effect on Homicides, report says. Remember after the Heller decision, they said, well, we'll have a spike in homicides because that we can't take people's guns away anymore, prohibit them. They wouldn't allow people to own firearms
Right.
in the city. And they claimed that this would make it the lawless Wild West. It didn't change anything. The homicide rate stayed steady. Uh, although what we've got to know, there was a woman named Emily Miller who wrote a book about her experience called Emily Gets Her Gun.
Uh huh.
And she said that when she decided after the Heller case was overturned that she was going to carry, they told her, they said, well, before you do, you have to train. And she said, well, where's the nearest training range? They said, well, we don't have one in the city. You'll have to go out because the city ordinance prohibits it. You have to go to Virginia. So she got in touch with the people in Virginia, and they said that'll be fine, but you do realize the city has an ordinance that says you can't take firearms back and forth across the city line. So if you're coming to the state of Virginia, you'll have to have a pistol here that we'll keep for you.
Right.
So they tried to make people jump through as many potential hoops as they could,
Mm-hmm.
even though the court had said no, no, no. They just kept throwing up more roadblocks.
And it worked. That people don't want to jump through those hoops. So those people were, for lack of a better term, they were neutered when it came to defending themselves, or being able to have a handgun or something to defend themselves with. That Emily Gets Her Gun. If a person can look that up, and I'm sure I've missed a few, but read those different articles, watch those little videos she makes. It's a pretty eye opening. Everything that she's got to go through. And I think she just renewed her permit again,
Yeah,
and that was still that was I mean that was a big old process in itself.
yeah, yeah. She's very humorous about it though.
Yeah, oh yeah.
She's not bitter by any means, which I think is a good way to look at it. And then there was the guy in Washington a few years ago. He saw a pit bull tearing up a little boy, and he shot and killed the pit bull. Then he got arrested because they said he didn't have a permit. And then after even media backed off on this one, and there was a hue and cry, look, he saved somebody's life. All of a sudden, the city decided to drop the charges against the guy. But it underscored sometimes it's not just about someone breaking into your house. This is a wild or nasty dog, and
Yep.
sometimes you have need to defend yourself, not just from a criminal, but
Well, you never know where a threat's going to come from. Human, two-legged, four-legged, it doesn't matter. It could be it could be as you're going out for your morning jog. I mean, it could be when you're at the grocery store. It could be when you're driving down the road. You don't know where the threat's going to come from. I know it was about a week, 2 weeks ago. As far as I know, there was no handgun involved or anything like that. But just here locally, some people were closing up at one of the restaurants. Is about 1 o'clock in the morning. Did you see the story?
Mhm.
And this guy and this gal, they closed up, they locked up, they were walking to their car, and someone jumped out from behind a dumpster and demanded their belongings, mugged them essentially, and then ran off. They weren't expecting that. They were just expecting to go home like they have every other Friday night after work. They lock up, they leave. They weren't expecting that to happen, and it did.
and for the people in the mornings who are opening these restaurants, I drive in just before 5 o'clock.
Hmm.
It's always dark, and I often see people who are walking to work and they're alone. And maybe on Washington Street on the north side you're okay because you're in more of a residential area, but on South Washington, you're kind of all alone in that warehouse district. And a lot of these people that I see walking to work are women because they're waitresses, or they've got to get in early and get the kitchen started, or they've got to go in and stock shelves, and they're walking alone. And I see that, and it frightens me to see that they're walking alone in a dark area where you don't really know who might be around.
Well, yeah, and I actually, you said you come to work about 5 or so. I actually am up earlier than that, and I'll be just cruising down Addison, driving to where I need to go to work at for the day. And I've seen there's one old boy. I don't know who he is. I don't know his backstory, but he walks down the street and he's throwing his arms around and he's having a conversation with, well, himself or the voices in his head. But those kind of people are out there, and I've seen some odd people doing some odd things at really early in the morning. And if you're out walking around, you need a way to defend yourself if you have to.
And even sometimes somebody like that actually could be a target because
Yep.
people think I can take advantage of that individual.
Oh, yeah, very much so. You got to have a way to defend yourself. You need to keep your eyes open, situational awareness up, look around. If you can stay when you're walking and it's late like that or early like that and it's dark, try to stay in the lights. Try not to take any shortcuts through any dark back alleys. I mean, that's just kind of common sense. But people don't pay attention to what they're doing, and you can actually walk into something.
There are some places that will not allow people to carry at work. I mean, a corporate policy. I had a friend, he worked in Houston at a TV station back in the early part of the century. So it would have
Hmm.
been about 15 years ago. And he said, company policy, they even had a sign up, no firearms on company property. But he said he grew up in Ottawa. He grew up in a
Right.
completely different sort of part of the world. Although he was born in this country, but he grew up, his dad got a job up there working in some science lab. But he said he was the only person, he was a non Texan. He said he was the only person who, who he knew who came to work without a firearm and followed the company policy. He said everybody else, especially the guys who went out with the live trucks,
Oh yeah.
where you have a lot of expensive equipment. And I've known TV photographers who've gotten beat up on the street.
Well, you're going to the worst areas to report from.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what do people do in those situations, though?
There's a couple different ways to look at it. If you can't carry at work and you're not supposed to, I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything to lose their job. Haven't we all need an income of some kind. We don't want to lose our jobs. But if you decide that you want to carry anyway, even though depending on where you work, if it's just a company policy, typically it's not going to be against the law for you to carry there. It's against company policy. So if you want to carry deep concealment, learn how to hide it and get a small gun. Concealed means concealed. Don't tell anyone. Don't play with it. Be responsible with it. They'll probably never know. If they do find out, you may be out of a job. That's just a risk that you take, but you got to weigh it. Is it your life? Is it is it worth my job? Is it you just got to weigh the benefits. Now, there's other things and stuff that I need to work on as well, but there's other different ways. You can carry a knife. You can learn how to use a knife. You can do some kind of martial arts, some kind of self-defense. There's all different kinds out there. You can learn something like that, and you can take that with you anywhere because essentially you're using your body as the tool there, and they're not gonna unless they tell you to stay home and work from home, and that's even better.
Yeah, that'd be great. I had a situation a couple of weeks ago, and this is, it's called situational awareness. I just gotten in the car in the morning,
Mhm.
and I suddenly heard a car alarm going off. Wasn't mine. Beep, 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 and I, immediately grabbed for my self defense.
Sure.
And then I looked in my rearview mirror, and I own two vehicles,
Hmm.
and I had a set of keys for the other vehicle in my pocket.
You
And when
set
I
off.
had I had set off the
Yeah.
alarm on my own of my Jeep, and I all right, but at least I was aware. When I heard that noise, it was like it caught my attention right away.
And that's another it is, and that's a good point. You were aware of what was going on. It caught your attention. So if and I tell my daughters this, I've told my wife this, they have that panic button on these newer cars. You got the key fob, whatever, and you can hit this panic button. That's not a bad thing to do. I mean, if you're walking toward your car after work and someone approaches you, hit that. Light that thing up, make it honk, make the lights flash. Do whatever you got to do to draw attention to it. Criminals, bad people, bad guys they don't want attention drawn to them. They want to go in there. They want to get out with the least damage caused, to them as possible. They want to take your money, take your wallet, or whatever, and they want to get out.
As you've reiterated before, you train with the idea that you'll never actually have to use the firearm. So if you can use the key fob, if you can park in a place
Sure.
with a lot of light, if you have a way to, a deputy showed me one time. He said if you're at a crowded parking lot in a store, he said open your door, pull the cart up, and he said if you've got the cart on one side and the
Yep.
door on the other, and they can't get to
You're
you,
blocking yourself in.
right? He said it takes away their opportunity.
Yeah.
So reaching for your pistol is the last thing you'd really like to be doing.
Right, because a pistol is always a handgun is always it's a tool, but it's always a tool of last resort. Okay, you don't want to have to use it. It's there in case you need to use it, but you don't want to have to use. You're going to open up a whole nother set of events if you have to draw that firearm, if you have to pull that firearm, if you have to shoot somebody, even if you're justified in doing so, you're going to go through court cases, you're going to go through, you'll be interviewed. I mean, it's just going to disrupt your life. And granted, it's there, and if it saves your life, fantastic. But just because they say, what do they say? If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Mhm.
We got to get rid of that mindset. Just because you carry a gun doesn't mean everything needs to be shot at.
Yesterday in France, and they have really restrictive gun laws. So the only people who could fire back at this gunman on the street happened to be the police officers.
Hmm.
In this country, though, we have the right to actually defend ourselves in a situation like that on the street with some equal force. And that's what we've got to keep in mind is sometimes a threat like that can pop up even here.
Oh, yeah, it could here in little old, Twin Falls, Idaho, in Filer, Idaho, in Buell, Idaho, in Kimberly, Idaho. I mean, here at the radio station, you don't know. I mean, stuff can happen anywhere. I've worked here late at night before years and many many years ago, and I know there's been more than one case of guys being out here late at night when you used to have to stay overnight. Of people knocking on the window, people trying to get in the doors. It happens here. It happens at people's houses. Happens everywhere. You just need to be aware. You need to be ready, and just don't think you're immune because you're not. And we've talked about this before, as the population grows, as more and more people move here, you're going to get more and more criminal type activity.
I have one neighbor who's a Twin Falls police officer, and I have another neighbor who's a state trooper. So I have some protection in my neighborhood, but still, they work sometimes, so they're not always there. And these are the reasons you have to be, I think, attuned.
Well, exactly. And just because you can pick up a phone and you can dial 911, and they're going to be there. They're going to be there as quick as they possibly can get there. But you know what? They might be 10 minutes away. They might be 15 minutes away. If you live out in the county and not in the city limits, they might be 20 minutes away. It just depends on where. Now they're going to light their sirens up and they're going to get there as quickly as they possibly can. But a lot can happen in 30 seconds. A lot can happen in 5 minutes.
We have to take a short break. Hold those telephone calls, and Todd's going to talk to you as well about how, if you haven't trained, you want that concealed carry permit because if you're going out of state, you're going to need it
Yep.
for reciprocity. More details on that on the way in a few minutes. Todd Eccles joining us from Patriot Defense with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Hold the telephone calls. We'll get to them. It's 41 at 920. Todd Eccles is in the studio with us this morning. We're here until 10 o'clock. We're talking firearms today on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number to reach the program is 736-0300. That's 736-0300. And I do want to mention as well, my email address is bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. Todd, if people would like to contact Patriot Defense before we get to our first caller.
They can call, they can text me, area code 620-794-6223. One more time, that's area code 620-794-6223. They can find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense, shoot me a message, comment, like the page, and I'll get back with you.
We have a caller. Caller, you're up next at 923. Go ahead.
Before there was Mace, when I worked as a security guard at a Tahoe casino partially owned by Sinatra, I kept a salt shaker handy, whereby, if needed, I could throw salt in a bad guy's eyes.
Not a bad idea.
There's better options out there, but you know what? That works. If you look around, there's lots of weapons around us at all time, and if you don't have a firearm and you don't have mace, and maybe you don't have salt, maybe a woman or anyone could put a set of keys in between their fingers. Make a fist, slide them in between their fingers, and it's essentially they can hit, they can punch, they can claw with that. There's sticks, there's baseball bats, there's whatever you have around you. Use what you have to use. If you're trying to survive, survive.
The old spikes on the German helmets in World War One,
Mm-hmm.
those were sharpened, and the idea was, if you suddenly ran out of ammunition, you could put your head down and try to hit someone square in the chest with that spike. And then they developed these metal gloves that had spikes on them too, so they could grab those and take a swing at
Pretty
someone.
pretty medieval, but it works if you got to use it, you got to use
It
it.
was as a backup. And for people taking your courses, and you have one tomorrow.
Yes, I have a class tomorrow. It's for the Idaho Enhanced Permit class. It's tomorrow. We're going to have some good weather. I did start digging my range. Now it's not going to be done yet. It'll probably get done in the next week or two. Actually, we're really close. But we're going to have the classroom portion at my house, and then we'll break for lunch, and we're going to go over and we'll do the shooting portion over at the Buell Rifle and Pistol Club. It's a pretty full class, but if someone called me and said, "Hey, look, I can't. I need to get in. I need, I'm gonna fit you in. But if you can't make it to this one, I do have another one next month. My Saturdays are really full next month. Graduation, state trap and skeet shoots, finishing up everything. But I was able to fit in a class on Saturday, May 20th, and I haven't announced that on Facebook yet. I just kind of put it together last night. So if you're interested, get a hold of me. Let me know on Facebook. Call me, text me, area code 620-794-6223. And I did put a post on the Patriot Defense website or Facebook page the other day. Um, I posted that it was a good week. We started building the range, and I hired my first Patriot Defense employee. Did you see that post, Bill?
Yes. Yeah.
His name is Lenny, and he's a duck.
Yeah.
He wanders the
Sits
yard.
high atop a.
Yeah, he wanders the yard and he gets in everyone's business. So if you show up at my class tomorrow, you may or may not see Lenny. If you do, say hi. He shouldn't cause you any problems. He's gonna be more scared of you than you are of him. But I hired him on as security guard and Patriot Defense mascot. So
I believe
make sure you say hi.
Forrest has an event coming up where it's a women's shoot, right? I think that's this weekend, perhaps too.
I read something about that. I think maybe
I might have to get back to that in the next half hour. But again, women, it's a good idea
Sure.
to actually get some training in. We have a caller. It's 926. Caller, you're up next. And you're on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Go ahead.
Good morning. I wanted to give a call and let you know that I had taken the class from Patriot Defense. I'm an older lady and didn't want to do it. I just did it to go along to get along with my husband, and it was really an awesome experience. I was taught how to hold the gun correctly. I was a terrible shot, but by the end of the shooting part of the course, I was able to hit the paper on the wall. Not only it was an 8-hour class, and I thought that was terrible, but it was lots of fun. Not only it was a class informative, but Todd's pretty funny. So it just was a really great experience. All those ladies out there that don't want to do it, I would just recommend that you do. It was a great experience for me. So that's what I wanted to say.
I appreciate that, and one of the reasons I have to do this is because my wife and kids don't think I'm funny anymore, and so I got to get new people in there to laugh at my jokes. But no, we have a great time. There was the last class I did. There was a, and I apologize. I didn't catch your name. If you said, I don't think you gave your name, but I see a lot of people, and so I have a hard time remembering people in my classes. But so if you're one of these women, I apologize. But there was a group of of some ladies that showed up at my last class, and they were, they're older ladies, and they showed up in the little car, and they came into the class, and some of them had shot before, some of them had not, and they were just the greatest group of gals. And the one lady pulled out a gun that she was going to shoot. She'd borrowed it. It was a little Kimber 380, great little gun, but it was going to have a little bit of a kick. So I gave her my brand new gun that I'd put like 5, 6 rounds through to shoot a little Smith & Wesson 2.0 and 9 mil, and she shot the heck out of that gun. Once she figured out how to do it, she kept all 100 rounds on the piece of paper. In fact, I want to say she was probably the best shot in the class. And it was great, and we took pictures with them. I posted it on Facebook, and her friends said that they all go to church together. They were going to vote her in for head of church security. But we had a good time.
Speaking of various models, do you get the Tim Schmidt emails?
I do, but I don't think I've actually looked at many of them.
I just sometimes.
Is that USCC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I look through those because it's like that kid in the candy store thing because of the different recommendations and sometimes the giveaways they have.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I got to be careful. I'll start putting in for those giveaways, and then I'll find something I want to buy, and then pretty soon I won't have enough money to build a range.
Yes, yes, the next big step. Well, we have to take a short break in just a moment. We've got 9:30 break, but one more half hour. Todd Eccles is with us from Patriot Defense. We've got more coming up with Bill Colley as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And a reminder, next Wednesday morning, Dr. Jonathan Tripp expected to be in studio with us between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. We do it every Wednesday morning with one of the medical professionals from Tripp Family Medicine right here in Twin Falls on Fillmore Street across from the main post office. And they have a great slogan, life's too short not to feel good. The doctor also is available to take your questions and comments about anything that ails you medically. And we wanted to point out, too, his office is still looking for new patients, and they can generally see you if you're a patient on the very same day if you call up and you've got a medical issue. Our guest in the studio this morning is Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense, and he joins us most Friday mornings. We were away Good Friday, but we're also taking your telephone calls today about training issues, and we like to say all things guns because even if it's a question we can't answer, you know dang well in this audience somebody out there knows the answer.
Oh yeah.
And so we don't have that particular worry. It's 9:34. Bill Colley with you as well. 42 right now at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I was sharing a story with you off air. 1990, I was a young reporter working in Syracuse, New York, and it was a hot summer day, and I remember we suddenly started hearing some chatter about a pretty dangerous shooting taking place on one of the main drags in the city. And I was one of the first reporters on the scene, and what had happened was a man who had no criminal record, and he was the building superintendent in his apartment building on this street. His girlfriend lived in the building. They had had a breakup, and he was depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And then she started seeing someone else, and that made him more depressed. And so and then he had a couple of other issues in his life all kind of collide at once. And he popped a clip into a rifle. We won't call it an assault rifle. That's a media thing.
Yeah.
He popped a clip into a rifle, and he shot her dead as she was coming home from work, and then just started shooting randomly up and down the street. And he killed a few more people and wounded some others. But there's a situation where you always have to be aware that you don't know when and how. It could be a family member or a friend who just snaps. It's a good idea to be prepared.
It is. And as you were telling me the story, now and a little earlier we were discussing it. I just saw a deal, an article about that shooter down in Oregon that went into that mall. So a bunch of people went into that mall. They went shopping. This was a few years back. They went shopping. They were just doing whatever, and this guy walks in, and whether he planned it, was having a bad day, whatever. I don't know the full backstory. He started shooting. He started shooting people. Okay. And the thing that those people weren't expecting that to happen. And the thing that stopped him, and it got a little bit of press. I don't think it got a lot of press because, of course, the antis don't want you to hear about this. The media doesn't want you to hear about it. Is there was a gentleman there that was concealed carry. He had his handgun with him, and he had an opportunity, and he drew his firearm, and he drew down on this guy, and he said he had him in his sights, and the guy that was shooting stopped, turned, looked at him because his gun had jammed, and stopped, turned, looked at him, and then just quit shooting, put his gun down, and he was done. So essentially, this concealed carrier was able to stop what we presume would be a lot more shooting, a lot more death, a lot more violence, just by pointing his gun at him. Just he was getting prepared to take the shot, and then the guy stopped. And the concealed carrier did what he should do at that point. He was done. He didn't have to shoot the guy. Guy wasn't in the middle of shooting, but he stopped that. He stopped that shooting because he was there. He had his gun. He was prepared. There is, and it depends on how you want to look at it. There's a gentleman on YouTube. I don't even know if he's still on there, but he had a YouTube series, and he talked about if you carry a gun, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your community to be responsible with it, obviously. But if you are going to take the time to get trained and carry that firearm, you you needed to carry everywhere you went because you needed to, just in case something happened, to protect you, to protect others. You had a responsibility. If you decided to do it, go all the way with it. Now, I agree with them to a certain extent. Some people say they just want to protect themselves, their families. They're not going to run down a shooter. But and if you have a permit and if you can carry everywhere you go, because random acts of violence pop up everywhere. This guy that you told us about, he was having a bad time, money, families, girlfriend, wife, whatever, and he just snapped. Probably no one ever knew he was gonna snap. He probably showed no signs. It just one day was a perfect storm and he snapped. That could happen anywhere. We have lots of events here in the Magic Valley that I like to attend with my family, and Bill, I'm sure you like to go to big parades, Western days, sagebrush days, all kinds of events all the time. And these are events where a lot of people come together from all over the valley. Some of them probably come as far away from Burley, Kimberly, all the little towns, and they collide upon Twin Falls. Whenever there's a lot of people like that, bad stuff can happen. And if someone snaps right then and there, there's a lot of people. It's like fish in a barrel.
We have a caller about a minute before the break. Caller, we're going to get you on the air, and then if we have to do it, we'll answer it on the other side of the break. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Very well. Good morning, gentlemen. Just a quick technical question about magazines, specifically AR, both metal and synthetic. You hear one school of thought says, stuff them all away, 30 rounds, they'll store fine. Or some say, stick 28 in there, they'll store just fine. I don't really know. I wonder if you gentlemen might have any insight on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I got time to answer now? Or?
About 30 seconds.
Real quick, with if the newer magazines and if they're polymer, they are the metal can handle it. As far as what I've been taught and been told, I've asked the same question before. Load them suckers up, leave them loaded. You should be fine. Like I said, the metallurgy and stuff that goes into them now, the quality of metal, they will hold just fine. You're not going to ruin them by doing that.
Want to thank you for the telephone call. We'll take a short break. More calls coming up if you're inclined. And about 20 more minutes left in our show today. Todd Eccles is joining us from Patriot Defense. He'll also pass along again in a few minutes how you can contact him if you'd like to take the class. That's on the way in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you, too, on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I wanted to mention you can also email us today. I have an email that comes from one of my coworkers. It says, tell Todd, I've seen the same guy quite a few times. I figure he is talking to a higher power. Whatever the case, he is totally into his conversation.
Well, yeah. I'm hoping that's what he's doing, and he just is taking his early morning walk. We'll see. I mean, just keep an eye on it because there's folks like that out there that there's a lot of mental illness in this country, and not everyone's getting treatment for it. And it's a scary thing. I think they should receive treatment for it, but not everyone can or can afford it. I mean, I don't know the full story on that, but they're out and about, and we just got to be very mindful of them.
We had a young man I worked with many, many years ago, and he was having some problems, and he was busy. I was at a TV station. He was busy setting up some cameras for a newscast, and he thought one of his coworkers said something to him, and they nearly got into a fist fight over this. And I said, I didn't say anything, and he said, I heard you, and he had assumed somebody had said something, and as it turned out, he was struggling with some depression himself,
Right.
and I've seen that happen, or I've been places where somebody just suddenly comes up and tries to start something with you, even though you've never seen him before.
Some people are just that way, and they want to try. And you always try to talk your way out. Always try to, you know, you should be a lot. If you're carrying a handgun, you should be a lot nicer person, more respectful. Because hey, yeah, we can't get in this fight here. You should be thinking in your head, I can't get in this fight. I've got a firearm on me. Whether I use it or whether we get in a fight and he takes it and uses it on me and other people, I need to avoid this. Try to put out the fire the best you can. And if you have to walk away and if you have to leave, that's what you need to do. Just be responsible about it.
No, you won't ever see this on television commercials because television would be antsy about airing this. But there was a commercial that was on YouTube a couple of years ago, and a woman is walking down the street at night. It's dark, and a guy leaps out of an alley, grabs her, and pulls her into the alley. And then you see two flashes of light along with bang, bang. And a few
Yeah.
seconds later, she comes walking out and adjusts herself and brushes herself off and continues to walk. There you go again. You just don't know.
You don't, and I like that video. Maybe I'll dig that. I'll have to dig that one up, and I will throw that up on my Patriot Defense Facebook page. But I was thinking a few minutes ago when we were talking about stuff happening and you not knowing when it's going to happen and people just snap. I did a class. I've only done one so far, but it was a active shooter class. I did it out at Three Creek School. Good class, and I put together a pretty decent PowerPoint on it, and I highlight some of the but we go over a few of these like mass shooters, these gunmen, and we kind of give the details of what happened. And just kind of a side note here, maybe I should print those off. Maybe I bring them on. We can read them on the air, and we can talk about how that the uh, the toll that these active shooters can take on people, and how it just happens. You don't know when it's going to happen. It just does. I got some videos I'll send you, Bill. Maybe I'll post some videos up on Facebook as well about people in a building. They're just at their work, and some guy just walks in and just randomly starts and starts shooting people. Now, this isn't an actual event. It's something, but it's a pretty realistic type video, and it just opens your eyes up. It can happen when you're at work. It can happen when you're at church. The last Saturday this month, I've got a group of people from a church coming over, and they're on their church security team. And the head of the team wants him to come and just send these people through some basic shooting, so I can say, well, this guy needs work over here, and this guy needs. But the point that makes me happy is they are taking their security seriously, and they've got a plan. Hopefully they'll never have to use it, but you have people that show up to church, people that are trying to find God, which is not a bad thing, but they may be high, they may be homeless, they may be, you don't know what kind of background. Hopefully they're there to find God. Some of them may just be there to look for easy pickings. Okay, look for charity, take things. You got to be aware of these people. You need to be prepared for them, and just be prepared at all times.
We have a caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense on KLIX.
Yeah, good day. I was just wondering if I heard about the law that a concealed carry permit was not required to conceal carry in Idaho. Has that been passed? Is it true? And also, are you allowed to carry at a public park?
Okay. Yes, you can carry at a public park in the state of Idaho. No problems there. As far as this law, the law you're concerning out is what they call constitutional carry or permitless carry. And yes, that was voted in, and that went into effect last July 1st. And that says that if you are a resident of Idaho, you do not need a permit to concealed carry in the state of Idaho. Now you do have to, if you're going to conceal carry without the permit, obviously, just like if you have a permit, you have to obey the rules. No carrying to post office, no carrying into federal county buildings, that kind of thing. But what that does not get you is that is not reciprocal in other states. So you can't leave the state with your firearm. You couldn't travel to Nevada. You couldn't travel to Washington State. You couldn't go to Wyoming. Okay, that doesn't leave Idaho's borders. If you want to travel, you need the an actual permit, and the best permit right now is the Idaho Enhanced Concealed Carry Permit. It's the one I mostly do classes for. I'd have to count again, but I think that one's good for 34 states, 35 states. That's what it's reciprocal in. So you have to have that permit so you can carry your gun if you travel into other states. Also, if you have that permit, you can actually carry on state of Idaho college campuses in certain areas. Now, you can't take it in living areas, so no dormitories. You can't take it anywhere that will seat over 1,000 people, but you can carry on the campus to class in the business offices on the campus itself. But if you do not have that permit, you cannot carry on the college campus. Okay, so there's some differences there. And another thing some people overlook is just having a permit. It makes it so when you go to purchase a firearm, it makes it easier. You've already done the background check. So if you go in there and you're buying a firearm and you have your permit, you're going to fill out the same paperwork, but they don't have to call it in. You don't have to wait. They're going to take your permit. They're going to take your license. They're going to take photocopies of it. You're going to fill the paperwork out. They're going to sell you the gun, and you're going to leave.
I want to see if our caller's still with us. Caller, does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Appreciate that very much, you guys. You have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
9:49. We've got about 10 minutes to go. And, of course, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense in studio with us this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Bill Colley with you as well. Telephone number 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Before we get to the next caller, callers, stay there. We're patient. Hopefully you are too. I just want Todd to give his contact information out.
Sure, you can call me. You can text me at area code 620-794-6223. One more time. That's area code 620-794-6223. You can find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. If you go there, like the page, I like to see that number grow. You can message me there. You can comment on something, and I will get a hold of you.
Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Well, it always comes down to this. I've called in the past about defending my home. And, your instincts are, to use lethal force. But then next thing you know, you're in court, and they were intruding on my property, but I didn't have any right to defend it because it's always some gray thing, and I don't have time to wait for the cops to come. So, say for instance, that's an issue, and then I happen to have a concealed carry, or maybe I'm just have it strapped on my hip, and we have a crime being committed that is potentially, deadly to some innocent victim. Or we happen to, God forbid, we have a terrorist, a Muslim terrorist, or any kind of a terrorist, I guess, who is, proceeding to kill as many people as possible. And your instincts are to say, well, I'm going to stop this. But see, then you say, well, yes, but the way the law is now, we can't really do anything because we may be liable for whatever. And see, I mean, it's such a sticky mess. I'm going to hang up and let you comment. See ya.
Okay. You can obviously, like you point out, you can defend yourself in your home. If someone breaks into your house at night and you consider them a threat to you, to your wife, to your kids, or just any kind of threat, you can stop them. I wouldn't tell law enforcement officers that, hey, I use lethal force. You actually use your gun. You shot to stop the threat. That's what you want to say. You stopped the threat. When it's no longer a threat, you need to quit shooting. And whenever you use your firearm, especially in your home, let's say someone kicks in your door at 2 o'clock in the morning, you shot to stop the threat, and you have to be able to relay that, to be able to explain that to law enforcement when they arrive. If someone kicks open your door and they're walking out with your TV, can you shoot them in the back? No, probably not. If someone kicks open your door, you don't know what they're going to do. You wake up, you come out in the living room, you got your firearm, and they're standing there, and you draw your firearm, and they see it, and they turn around and run out of your house. You have to let them go. You can't shoot them in the back. If they make a move, you've got your firearm trained on them, you've got it drawn, they make a move for you. If you consider them a threat, as far as I'm concerned, that's a threat in my book. Do what you have to stop the threat, and then be able to explain that to law enforcement. Now, if you're out in public and you have to use your firearm to defend yourself, in Idaho says right now, if you can legally be wherever you're at, you can defend your life or the life of someone else. Okay? Again, you need to stop the threat. You need to shoot to stop the threat, not to kill, not to maim, not to use lethal force. You're shooting to stop the threat. It is what it is. Now, every time you use your firearm, whether it be in your house, whether it be in public, you are going to have lots of questions you're going to have to answer, and that's just the nature of the beast. That's something a person needs to know when they start to carry a firearm. There's a lot more that goes with it, and that's why I encourage everyone to take a class and learn the Idaho lethal force laws. Learn what's going to happen if you have to use your firearm, legal or not legal. You're going to have to answer questions. You may go to jail for a night. You may go to jail for a day or two till they get it worked out. That's a sacrifice. That's a trade. That's a trade. Unfortunately, that's a trade we have to make to be able to carry a firearm to defend ourselves. You're going to have to answer some questions if you have to use it. You may have to go to prison, but if you do it right and you do what you're supposed to and you know the laws, you're going to be okay. But that's a choice you need to make now before a person ever decides to carry a gun. It's not just cut and dry. I shoot someone, I save the day, I'm going to go home. That's not the way it's going to be. And you have to make that choice now. Maybe you don't want to stop that terrorist. Maybe you don't want to stop that person that's getting beat up in the park. That's another choice you have to make. Maybe you're just defending yourself, your wife, your kids, your family. It is what it is. Make that choice now. There's nothing wrong with it. But you got to understand that if you draw that firearm, if you pull that trigger, you're going to have to answer for that. And so you need to make sure you're doing it correctly. But you can defend yourself. You can defend yourself against a threat.
I wanted to just mention quickly. There's in my email. There's a story about an Idaho girl. Her name's Sarah Palin. She was from Sandpoint originally, so she's an Idaho native.
There you go.
She was appearing on CNN, and they were asking her, "Well, were you ever harassed sexually at Fox News?" She said, "Well, I'm sure there's some cultural issues there that need to change." But she said, "You know, women need to be able to defend themselves in all situations and stand up for themselves." Now, she's talking about not putting up with any guff, but you translate that as well to your self-defense, and that means that goes back to our caller earlier who said she took the course because her husband suggested she do it. She went along, and then what an eye opener it was.
It's fantastic when women come take the class. They've got to be able to defend themselves. Their husbands work. Some of them drive trucks. Some of them are out farming, and people show up at the house, or they're going to go grocery shopping. They're at the kids. They for their kids typically. I love my kids and my wife, and I help them out and help out with the kids as much as I can. But I'm at work. I run a business. I have a day job. So my wife picks them up from school. She takes them to their practice. That's just the way it works. She takes them grocery shopping. She's in town. So I want her to be armed. I want her to know how to defend herself. She is she is the first responder. She's going to be the one that's there when something bad happens in the parking lot. She's going to be the one that's there if they're in Walmart or Winco and someone comes in and starts shooting. She is the first responder for my kids. She needs to be able to take care of herself and them.
We have a caller. Caller, you may be the last caller of the day, but go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hey, I've got a question for Todd, and I was a permit holder myself, having taken the enhanced class. I was wondering, Todd, are you planning any sort of perhaps advanced classes for those that have been carrying for a while that are looking to improve their skills and perhaps going a little bit beyond just the basics that you teach in your class?
I am glad you asked because until just recently, I have been kind of, I was at a point where I couldn't give those classes because I use an indoor range and it's limited, very limited on what you can do on an indoor range through safety reasons and the range I use scheduling. I actually have a little range is almost done. You give me another week or two, and I'll have it up and functioning. And I've got a friend of mine. He used to live here. He lives in Boise now. He did a lot of law enforcement instruction, and he's in the military working up there. But I have been talking to him for a while. In fact, I just talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he's putting together some of those exact classes. And he's going to come down, and we're going to help instruct those, whether it just be him or me and him together, more than likely. And so hopefully, I'm going to start getting those ready and get those rolling. I want to say by June because I want to break free from. We do lots of different classes, but I want to get into some of these classes that you're talking about because I want to break free from this. Todd just does the concealed carry permit classes, and that's it. I love doing those classes, and that's a staple. And I love introducing people to guns who've never fired guns before, but they don't have anywhere to go afterwards. And so yeah, I'm going to start doing. I'd look for June. Look for that in June. You may get on my Facebook page because I will announce that as I go. I've talked to this gentleman, and as soon as my range is done, he's going to come down here. We're going to run through some of these classes, and I'm going to kind of see what his lessons plan entail, and then we will get them live and up and running. So yeah, those are in the very, very, very near future.
Want to thank you for the call, and we've got to wrap up for the day. But once more, your telephone number for people who'd like to get in touch.
Area code 620-794-6223. Once again, it's area code 620-794-6223. Find me on Facebook, like the page. If you're going to be at my class on Saturday and you see him, make sure you say hi to Lenny.
And Rush Limbaugh, and there's a big Lenny outside that's it's going to be the biggest duck I've ever seen in my life.
He's ugly too.
Yes.
Lenny's getting a girlfriend today too.
And we wanted to point out, of course, Rush Limbaugh following the news at 10 o'clock from Fox here on KLIX, and God willing, at the Creek Tone Rise. That'll allow me to come back on Monday morning and do this all over again between 8 and 10 o'clock.